Sadness settles in as the Wisconsin Badgers have yet another early exit in the NCAA tournament. We say goodbye to Tyler Wahl and now Conor Essegian. Yikes. We touch a little bit on NCAA tournament hockey, both men's and women's. And of course, spring football has begun. The countdown to football season has officially kicked off. Welcome to the Bucky Report.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome into the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, the Badgers' early exit from the NCAA tournament. Goodbye to Tyler Wahl and Conor Essegian. The women's hockey team lost tonight in the national championship. We'll touch on that just for a short minute. And selection show for men's hockey. And of course, spring football has begun. But the best thing about today's show is a certain someone is joining us.
The great Ryan Herrings.
Ryan Herrings, host of Locked On Badgers, joins us tonight. Justin, my friend, how are you? Are you recovered? I'm not. Are you recovered from the tournament?
I was never really, like I said, I checked out. I told you guys earlier in the season that I officially checked out on things. And it's been kind of just amazing to kind of emotionally just be like, I'm dead inside.
What part of anything is amazing? What part of this is amazing? Nothing's amazing.
No, it's like I'm not tied up in expectations. Like, it's just like, this is what I think is going to happen. Well, sure enough, that's what happened. And so I wasn't like, I had no expectations for the tournament. Like, it was nice to see us get on a roll in the Big Ten tournament, but the team had played so uneven over the course of the season that it's like, I have no idea what they're going to do once they get into a tournament game here. And I said the roadmap was already out there for them. And I really felt that way coming into it, that if they decided to stick the screws to us on defense, it was going to be a problem. And that's exactly what happened. And we just reacted horribly to it.
I mean, we weren't prepared at all. It was just a mess. Ryan, 2 days after the tournament the tournament exit, you've had a few days to just kind of soak it all in. Where is your head at right now on this program? And any thoughts about the game now that it's been a couple days?
I am incredibly frustrated by it. And I think blame's everywhere. I think it's really easy after to point it all. I think the players didn't show up. I don't think the coaches showed up. I think blame is everywhere. I'm frustrated by it. I'm kind of speechless still. Winning Gambler says Ryan's wife has nothing to worry about. He is Mr. Loyal. He will be happy with Gardo to infinity.
No,
all, I don't think so.
No, you're wrong there. You're wrong there.
I will say Ryan's wife landed a freaking keeper, and she did great to get me. No, I'm not happy with Gard. Like I'm not. But here's where we've talked about this a bunch. And after big wins, it feels like there's a relitigation on Greg Gard needs to stay, and after every loss, it feels like there's a relitigation on he needs to go. This is a really troubling sign in March, and I think he needs to be on the hot seat. I really think he needs to be on the hot seat. I'm not fully committed to you need to fire him because this team improved from last year, and I don't know. I mean, if you were to rephrase and say, hey, at the beginning of the year and say, hey, this is going to be the number 5 team in the Big Ten. They're going to be a 5 seed. They're going to beat Purdue in the Big Ten tournament, then lose in the first round. Would you have immediately said he needs to be fired?
No, I wouldn't have said that. And I don't think I'm going to necessarily say that now, but I agree with you on the hot seat. I mean, I think he really is.
There's just more context there that's required for me.
For sure,
I would have needed to know what our overall record was and everything.
Right. And yeah, because the performance is an important part of it. So for me, I came on your show, Ryan, for a few minutes yesterday and just exploded with anger. So I want to talk about a couple things with that now that I've had a couple days to just reflect on everything. First of all,
you still feel the same.
I do feel the same, but I will say that yesterday or 2 days ago, I definitely was like, I put a lot more blame on the players, but then as I think more about it, I think that's really more 50-50 and probably a little bit more towards Greg Gard and the coach, because I don't know that I've ever seen us more unprepared for a game, or at least the way it appeared from my perspective, from the fan perspective, right? Like, this team put tons of ball pressure on us, right? They were going to pressure the ball every day. They played with a super good intensity. And yes, while look what happened to them today, I don't think they're a great team. They did play really well, and they deserve credit for the way they did, the way they were able to maintain that intensity for all of 40 minutes of the game too. So there's that. But I just don't think we were prepared at all. It's how do you do that? How exactly are we not watching film on these guys and being prepared and understanding that why does it look like the soon as we get double down low, it's like we have no idea what to do to get out of it. It's like we constantly dribbled into turnovers. We passed into turnovers. We're making poor decisions. Where does that come from after we had such a great tournament in Minneapolis last week? We just beat Purdue, who, by the way, looks like they're on a collision course with UConn in the national title game. I just don't understand why this happened, and I am really frustrated about it. But I mean, I do think we have improved. There's no doubt about that. There's an improvement from the sense of we missed the tournament last year. We made it as a 5 seed. We finished 5th in the Big Ten, which is not where we want to be, but it's much closer to where we want to be. I don't think Gard is going to get fired, but I do think that you're right, Ryan. He deserves to be on the hot seat. McIntosh has to have these types of discussions now because, like, you can't. What have we won? Like 2 tournament games in 7 years? Is that a right? I think I read that somewhere. Is that a correct stat? I mean, that's actually right.
It feels right. Yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable to think that we've advanced out of the first round twice in 7 years. Get out of here. Like, why?
Now you see where I've been sitting all along with this team. Now, I guess there's going to be somebody out there that's going to be like, well, COVID 1 year. So that's out. Well, it's still 2 times in 6 years or 2 wins in 6 years. Like, that's not a good stat.
Yeah.
I will put, people will push back a little bit with what has happened with Bo Ryan's record and talk about, well, Bo underperformed at times too. I've dug through the data on Bo Ryan. Like, he never went more than 3 years without having a Sweet 16. That tells you all you need to know about him. And now I don't expect that from a coach. What I would like to see is a coach that consistently gets us into the tournament and gets us at least to the round of 32. And say every 3-4 years we get a Sweet 16 or something like that, where the team at least feels built to make a run. This year's team felt like it was heavy on offense, weak on defense. And whenever you have that and you're going into a tournament, it scares me because it takes you one bad night of shooting and you're out. You have nothing to hang your hat on. You can't really put a squeeze on the other team if you're not hitting shots. And that's kind of what we are. Like, in that game, JMU could pretty much, I mean, after the meth wore off and they started playing like they were under control, they could pretty much get what they wanted offensively against us.
And we still had chances, by the way. We still closed it to within 5, 6, 7 in the second half. Of course, that horrible, play that you guys certainly talked about yesterday or 2 days ago now is Klesman almost had a layup and it turned into a transition 3. Now, here's what I don't understand about that play. Nobody crashed the boards, right? There was no Badger anywhere near the basket when it sat up on the rim for Max Klesman. How do we give up a transition bucket on the other side and no less a transition 3? Like, if you're not going to crash the boards and everyone is back, why are you giving up a transition bucket? I mean, I'm like, how does that even happen? I mean, it's just frustrating. Ryan, where do you put most of the blame? If you're by percentage, where are you right now as far as Greg Gard and the players in that game?
I would say it's 70-30 on Gard, 80-20 on Gard. Like,
wow.
I'm very critical. So I want to be super clear on something. AJ Storr didn't show up. I've said that. AJ Storr did not show up. I don't blame Tyler Wahl. Like, Tyler Wahl was hurt.
He's banged up. You could tell.
He
fell down like 5 times on one possession.
Like, he's a warrior, but like the players didn't show up. But ultimately, it all goes to Gard. Like, I've said this before on my show. Like, it all goes to the captain of the ship event. Ultimately, he's responsible for the roster, the construction. I think the players let him down, but ultimately it's on Gard. It's on Gard. And the other thing with Gard, and I don't know if you guys would disagree with him, the thing that drives me nuts, and I've been churning on it more in my head. There's no identity with this team. Like, toughness, no. Defense, no. Consistent offense, no. The ability to consistently hit the post, no. Like, what the byproduct of every game,
effort, rebounding.
No. Like, the byproduct of after every game we talk about, well, Klesman stepped up today, and then it was Hepburn one day, then it was Storr one day. That means there's no identity. There's nothing you point to on this team that you say, I know every game I'm getting that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem.
I agree with that.
Even effort, you
100% is a
could even
problem.
put effort in that category.
Agreed,
That's, I mean,
100%.
you're so right, Ryan. That's a great way to look at it.
We talked about this before, the principles of what Wisconsin was built on previously, and they have kind of disappeared. Like, we're not what we were under Bo Ryan, which was really high defensive effort, strong on rebounding, and we're going to just grind you and make you work for everything, and we're going to be good enough offensively. And we talked point differential on this at least I did the last couple of years. We've talked about it. The differences between what Bo's teams were doing offensively, like the separation from other teams and how they beat up. We were better this year, 100%. I don't know what the gap ended up being by the end of the season because we had our weak spell there where we kind of tailed off. But Bo pretty consistently had teams where they'd be a 10-point differential. And that's not something Gard has done. If I'm going back, I think he may have done it 1 year, and it was back like 2016 or 2017 with Bo's old guys. Other than that, we haven't.
Yeah, it's just rough. It's just rough to even deal with this right now. I mean, and watching Duke just take this team apart, by the way, today. Now, they weren't allowed to be as aggressive early on because, the fouls, they just weren't called against us. But whatever, they're going to be called against Duke because, as you pointed out right yesterday, Duke just gets those calls. But
Coach K made a call.
And I there was definitely a lot of people that were like, "Oh, JMU was way better than everyone thought." Yes, they did play well, but I still don't really think they're a great team. Like,
I don't either.
Like, we beat Purdue a week ago. So like, there's that has to be. It's just
JMU took the skill out of the game.
Yeah,
they flat out did. Yeah. They played with aggression to the point where we were so rattled that skill didn't matter.
Yeah. Thomas Miller says there's no accountability on the players, whereas Bo would sit dudes for making mistakes. He goes on to say effort, Rajiv. I'm talking about the blame, plain and simple. Can't blame Gard for that.
You can hold them for not holding players accountability, giving accountability for effort.
Right.
I do agree with that, though. I think effort's on players. I
for sure.
But it goes both ways. In my opinion, you can't if you know a player's not giving that effort, you have to punish them for it.
But who do you put in? That's the problem.
Conor Essegian.
You dug your grave with the roster that you built. Unfortunately, you have no one to put in.
So yeah, I mean it ultimately leads to recruiting, and that point is very fair as well.
Yeah, I mean it is what it is. We saw the last game of Tyler Wahl, a guy that obviously his last game is just not a game that's going to be memorable in any way. And I feel bad about that in the sense that, he put in so many good years with this program. He was a great player for us. Give me one sentence, guys, about Tyler Wahl, your thought about his impact on the program now that we've seen his last game with us, and how do you think kind of he measures up in Badger history? Justin, you want to take that one?
That's an interesting thought. I really like him as a player. He was very up and down at times, but I think he played hard for most of his career, and I think he played hurt a lot. So I can appreciate who he was. I like to see the free throw percentage come up significantly this year. He was a flawed player. We knew that coming in, that he wasn't much, really a guy you were going to rely on as a jump shooter, but he definitely played hard.
I would say absolutely somebody I remember fondly. Like he really gave a crap. Tyler Wahl gave a crap about the program. He did, 100% did. And when he was healthy, he was a problem for a lot of teams. He was never a star, but he was in that tier right below that. So I wish he would have been healthy on the way out. I see the comment in there. He reminds me of Ryan Evans. I think he was a lot better than Ryan Evans.
Yeah.
But I understand the tier. I understand the point there.
Sure. Yeah, I think Ryan, I think Tyler Wahl is a guy that I will always love, and I always have loved. I think his effort, and he's a very unique player, right? He's a guy that you saw the guy, he played point guard in many cases. He was a 4 that was really versatile. I love the creativity under the basket. There was a guy that every time he had some kind of reverse layup, he always made it. He always found ways to score when it mattered. He was reliable defensively, not a great defender, but he was reliable. He worked hard. Effort to me is never something that I questioned with Tyler Wahl. Effort and heart, which is something that I obviously think about very, very much, and it's something that I look for in players. And I think that it's sad the way his career ended at Wisconsin, but what a great career it was. I'm definitely going to miss him. I think that he was a fantastic player, and when you look back at the guys who were here for 5 years and the impact they had on the program, he was that guy. I mean, he played early, he played often, he put together a lot of minutes, scored a lot of points, and someone who, again, like as you said, Justin, he improved. Like he worked on that free throw shooting. That was a big issue for him last year, and look what he did. He came out and got that done. Another guy that we lost today was Conor Essegian. I know you guys both talked about it already recently on your show on Locked On. I'm not surprised. Obviously, I don't think any of us are. When you go from 11 points a game down to 3, he's barely even playing. He's getting garbage minutes at the end of games, which I know that, Justin, you weren't really a fan of. Obviously, I wish he would have played more. I mean, even in this game, even in yesterday's game, when we were having struggles offensively, why would you not just put him out there at that point? You're down anyway. JMU's already embarrassing us. Let's see what we can do. Maybe he can get hot. And Max did a little bit yesterday at some point, which helped us. But I mean, I think the program still misses. I obviously last year we were really hyped on Conor, right? We were all excited about the guy that he was going to be. We had over/under bets on how many minutes he was going to have. Justin won that, by the way. Okay, but you know, like now it's sad to see him leave. I wish him well, of course. But you know, what kind of an impact do you think, Justin, this has on the program now that Conor's out?
I'm very curious to see how this offseason goes in general, because I'm wondering if we're going to see potentially multiple players leave, and Conor being one of those multiple. There's been some smoke regarding other players that Ryan, we discussed again on the post-game Storr, who may be getting some offers, which I don't blame you. If somebody's going to drop $800,000 or $1 million to you to come play in their program for a year, heck yeah, I'd do that. You don't know if you're going pro for sure. And that's like life-altering money. Mm-hmm. I think we need to take a look at this and realize that if something were to happen where this roster gets blown up a little bit, we could be in for an extremely rough year next year. Extremely. And by that, I mean like one of those years where you go like 9-23 or something like that type years. Because this team is the room for error we have if you lose a player like Storr. We saw what this offense looks like without having that guy who can just ISO and take over when they need to if nothing's working. And we had Conor last year when we did it. We don't have him now. We don't have Wahl. Like, this is a really thin roster right now without those guys.
I mean, it means transfer portal has to be done, right? I mean, at this point, you've got to build in the portal.
Can you get quality is the bigger question there.
Ryan, what are your thoughts on Conor leaving?
I mean, I would just start with, this is what the portal's for. I think the portal serves a good purpose for players who feel like they're not playing, right? Like, so I think it serves its purpose here. It could be win-win. It frees up a scholarship. Listen, if you take the names out of it and say, just look at Conor's stat line this year, and is Wisconsin getting the value of a scholarship out of him? Mm-hmm. Well, the answer is no. So this is an opportunity. It is an opportunity. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's an opportunity for a win-win where Conor goes somewhere where he plays better, and Wisconsin fills that scholarship with someone who can help him more. I also kind of wonder if this decision's been made for a while, and that's why he hasn't been playing. Like, people have been talking about why he didn't get in there. I think it's because he's already said he's going to leave. Internally,
that could very well be.
I think that's why he didn't play. And that's that. I don't know that, by the way. I'm just that's what I think probably happened.
It would make sense, though.
Yeah.
Like, why waste time putting effort into somebody who's not going to be here next year?
I think that's probably what happened. Listen, it puts a ton of pressure on Gard, and he has to knock this offseason out of the park, because I think they're going to Justin's point, I agree, they're going to need to fill 2 or 3 holes when you look at the bench and the starters. So it puts a ton of pressure on Gard. But the one thing I've said is Gard has done pretty well in the portal recently. So he's done it before. He landed in AJ Storr. So maybe he can do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point about Conor as far as not playing earlier in the year. Maybe that's why, right? Especially in the last, 10 or so games where he barely saw any kind of time except when necessary for fouls. Other than AJ Storr, I think we all kind of think that AJ Storr could be a guy that leaves. Outside of Storr, who else do you guys think could be on their way out? Not saying we don't know it has any knowledge, just your own instincts. Is there anyone else you feel like could be potentially on their way out? Ryan, do you think anybody else maybe? If you had to pick somebody.
Yeah, so I'll just say it, like, Chucky was given offers last year. I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't think he's going to go. I think Wisconsin would match for him, but he's an attractive player for a team in need of a veteran point guard.
Especially a team that has a lot of scoring elsewhere.
Yeah. I actually, Ryan and I talked a little about that, and I said flat out, he would be the guy that I think, and I actually think that there's an opportunity there for somebody, because he is if you want him to just be a distributor, there's a lot of things that Chucky does well.
Mhm.
Like if a blue blood came and looked at him and be like, hey, we need somebody that can just be a distributor to kind of get everyone else involved. And Chucky doesn't have to worry about being an athlete. He would become kind of, unleashed a little bit because he would have so little that's on his plate to be required to do. And I think there are teams that will make offers. Like there's enough upside there with him where I think somebody can look at it and be like, you know what? This is a guy that can go out there and score 20 for us if we need it in a game. He's a productive shooter. He's a guy who's what's the word I'm looking for as a defender? He's a guy who makes plays. He may not always be like locked in. Like I think the pick and roll he struggled with this year, but he makes shock plays on defense. Like
He's
multiple steals, positive things that he has outcomes in the course of the game as a defender. So I look at it kind of like I could see somebody offering him $500,000.
I will just say this. He was offered a lot of money last year and chose to stay in Madison. Yeah. So I don't want to put it out there like he's going to get money and he would take it.
No, true. But I look at it like from the standpoint of if the roster significantly changes in a negative way for him, he may look at it and be like, I don't want to sit here and be on a team that's just going to be spinning its wheels all year long. Like that's not fun to sit on a team that's just not good for a year.
Right. Nessa says Chucky. Easton Park says Gus, who is a guy that I'm more worried about the youth, honestly. For me, it's Gus Yalden, and it's what Dude Dark Ray says here, John Blackwell, to be honest. I don't think John Blackwell is going to leave because he just got here. He's obviously got plenty of playing time in his freshman year. But to me, like those guys represent the future of the program. And if you lose John Blackwell for whatever reason, he's not happy here. And I don't think he is. It's just that's what my concern is. Chucky would have a huge impact, of course. And you're right. The most probable one probably is Chucky, but I'm really worried about the youth. I just don't want to see Gus Yalden go anywhere because we haven't seen the guy yet. And I think we keep talking about front court depth. We keep talking about issues in the front court, and he has that potential. The same thing that we all saw in him before he got here and before last year. That's to me where I'm concerned about. I do not want to see the youth go. And Connor's already one of the youth, right? So now if you have Blackwell, if you have Gus or Nolan or someone else goes, then you've got real issues because now you've got to go find young talent to build out that roster for years in the portal. That concerns me.
I would be absolutely shocked if Gus got an offer from anybody, given that he didn't play at all this year. So if he had shown some promise, I think that it would be a little bit different. There'd be some concern. I think it'd be more likely you'd look at it and say, is something happened here where he's just not somebody that they look at as a piece moving forward and he's just off the roster?
That could be.
You're
right about that.
Let me ask you this really quick question. And I don't want to throw numbers out there like I know, but let's say hypothetically AJ Storr gets a top tier NIL offer. We'll say the 6 to 9, 800,000 range. Wisconsin, I'm telling you, Wisconsin NIL is in a better spot than a lot of people think. Would you match top tier NIL money for AJ Storr?
No.
It's an interesting question, right? Because he really doesn't play defense to the level.
I think if I'm looking at top tier, it needs to be somebody that is an all conference type player on the team that is an NBA type guy. Like we're talking about somebody, and Storr has a lot of promise, but there's also a lot in his game that needs to be worked on.
I 100% agree with you, Justin. I would also not match it, Ryan, because I think my issues with AJ Storr are the same thing I've said all year. I think that obviously there's issues with offense. Like he's just not as good of a finisher as I think I'd want him to be. And I think that if you're talking about top tier talent, you're talking close to $1 million in NIL money. You've got to be a guy that's really, really dependable. Now he is dependable to score in the double digits because he takes 15 to 20 shots a game. And I think that you've got to have someone who's a bit more efficient. And obviously his efficiency was one of the biggest issues he had. You're right. Defensively, there's just nothing there. I think he was a great add to the team. Athletic wing, we wanted him. We got him. He obviously helped elevate this team. No doubt about that. I don't want to take anything away from him there. But if he gets a lower tier offer, yeah, I'd match it. If he gets a higher tier, $700,000-$800,000, I'm not matching it. Are you?
I would tend to agree. And I love what he did offensively for us this year. But here's where I'm at. If you're paying a wing top tier money, he needs to be able to play better defense. And I was talking to Justin about this. How irritating is it to see Klesmit constantly matched up with the mask, a guy like the mask, when that should be AJ Storr's matchup. That should be AJ's guy. right? And so for that reason alone, I think he's kind of a one-way player right now.
And that's the type of player, honestly, that you'd be looking for. Would be somebody like Damask, who, if you're going to be putting that type of money in it, you want somebody that can consistently go for over 20 with high efficiency, and also gives you good secondary numbers and assists and rebounds, and is a plus player in general, kind of across the floor. Like, if that's the type of return on investment you need to have for that kind of money.
And maybe Storr still grows into that, by the way. Maybe in a year or two he still grows into that. But we didn't see the two-way impact that I thought we hoped we would see this year.
Yeah. Chris Hart says we must get a starting forward to replace Wall. We can't wait and hope somebody grows into that position. Totally agree, Chris. Last question on basketball before we move on to football for both of you. You are Chris McIntosh right now. You are sitting down in a conversation with Greg Gard. I'll start with this. I want to know what you guys think. What do you think Chris McIntosh is saying to Greg Gard right now? For me, I think he's saying, good, you're doing better in recruiting, you're doing better in the transfer portal, but you've got to advance to the tournament. I don't believe he's going to get fired this year, but I do think that if there is a first round exit next year, unless he wins a Big Ten title, I think he's out. I don't think you can do this. You cannot. This is the crown jewel of college basketball. This is it. Like, this is what happens in this sport. Yes, I value Big Ten a ton, and I value Big Ten championships, which is why I said if he wins it, that's different. But we're now becoming a team that can't get out of the first weekend. We were a team that was consistently a second weekend team. We were a team that people feared in the Big Ten, in the NCAA tournament, and that's not happening right now. So for me, I think Chris McIntosh is short leash. You're on the hot seat, and you have to start winning tournament games. Otherwise, this is just not going to work because there's so many red flags, and I can't see a situation where McIntosh is just like, "Yep, you're cool, good work improving. Better luck next year." I don't see that. I think it has to be a deeper discussion, and I think that's going to happen. What do you guys think is going through McIntosh's head right now?
Well, I've flat out said what I think is going to happen, and what would be going through my head. I would say flat out, your second half collapses are troubling. They're becoming kind of consistent here, year in and year out, and your production in the tournament it needs to be better. It's not good enough. And if you continue to show me that your teams are going to collapse every year in the second half of the season, and that they are going to collapse when they get into tournament play, then I have to take a look at it and be like, you're not the guy I'm looking for, because you're too inconsistent. And he just is. Like, he'll go off and beat a Purdue and then lose to a team that's like 11th in the Big Ten. And it's like, what is going on here? Why can you not get your team to play at a stable level of production on a game-to-game basis? I wonder if he wears thin on players over the course of a season.
He could. I could see that. I think you move the DEFCON level up, but you're still in if I'm Chris McIntosh, you're still in kind of a wait-and-see mode. I have a couple quick theories here. The first is, I kind of wonder if McIntosh is just more of a football guy. Like, that's his sport. That's what he played. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, and I'm not saying it's true or false, but there's a possibility Chris McIntosh sees a basketball coach winning 60-something% of the games and is okay with that. Especially considering, and this isn't a non-factor, Justin, I talked to you about this earlier. Rajiv, I don't know if I've said this to you, but consider the fact that he's not an idiot off the court. He generally brings in good kids. He doesn't embarrass the program, and he wins 60% of the games. And McIntosh is a football guy and just hired Luke Fickell. There's a chance that's just where his energy goes, and he's okay with Gard as long as Gard is winning 60-70% of the games, whatever it is, and getting into the tournament. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying we don't really know with McIntosh.
I would like to think that it's like they look at it from a financial aspect though too, and by having this go the way it is, you're financially impacting the bottom line of the athletic department. Like, there 100% is less investment happening from outside when we have a coach that big donors don't necessarily believe in. And I think that there is some level of that. With how big of a Badger fan I am, I would be very guarded with my money in terms of throwing it into the program, being like, I don't believe in this guy. Why am I going to put down $5-10 million for you to do whatever with the program when I don't think this guy is going to be able to take advantage of it?
Maybe
that's kind of how I feel.
Maybe that's his strategy to push NIL money to football away from, because he's a football guy.
I do think that's a good point. I mean, boosters are going to have a say in what happens at all levels of college basketball. The money coming in is going to affect and dictate kind of how those decisions are made. Ryan, I would say that I think it's an interesting point about him being football driven, but I think I disagree a little bit only because I feel like he wouldn't be like coming into this position as the athletic director. I think he is setting the tone, and this is just total speculation. I feel like the way he started with football, yes, because that's the baby and that's the money driver, but I think he's really setting the tone because don't forget what he did with hockey too, right? I mean, Mike Hastings was a big splash hire as well, and I feel like, and look what they're doing now. They're in the conference, they're in the NCAA tournament. I do think that like he has a more holistic cultural change view of Wisconsin athletics. And maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part. But I do think he's seeing the bigger picture now. And he's like, we're not just because for so many years, you know, Paul Christ, Greg Gard, you can draw some parallels there. It was, they win a good amount of their games. They're getting postseason football, basketball. We're okay. But he clearly sent that message to Paul Christ, like, no, this isn't good enough anymore. We need to be competing for championships. And I do think that message will go to Greg Gard, and it's going to be like, it's championship time or it's not going to happen, because if he doesn't see the trajectory of that program going up, I would think that he would push back a little bit more. But you're right. I mean, he could be just a football guy. That it's a really good point. I hadn't really thought about it like that before. You mentioned that to me once before, and I'm thinking about it more. And I do think he's got to look more holistically. And again, maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part, though.
And I would say he absolutely could. I'm just throwing it out there as a possibility. Yeah. Like he just might not be as crazy about basketball as we are, right? And I think the other element is certainly he made a bold move in hockey, but hockey was in a much worse place than basketball was when he made that move.
Oh yeah.
So Neza, fire the women's and men's basketball coaches. I'm actually going to push back on this. The women's basketball team made the NIT this year for the first time in forever. So they're making progress. That's a program that needs to be built. Mm-hmm. The women's basketball team has struggled. They're making progress. Now it needs to continue, but she's building something. That roster needed to be built up. You can't expect them to just go from day one from being one of the worst teams in probably Power 5 to suddenly being, you know, a NCAA team. Like, that's been a long time since that's what was on Wisconsin's reputation for women's hoops.
No doubt.
So we're getting there.
Justin, give me your thoughts on this. Kyle Renke says, if Gard is retained, I want to get new assistants. Do you feel like there's any potential turnover in the assistants?
I think that's a good idea, quite honestly. I don't know if we're getting the value out of the guys that we have. It's not showing up in recruiting. It's not showing up on the court for the most part. Like, we have a lot of games where we just don't look like we make good adjustments. Now, a lot of that's on Gard, but you'd like to have assistants that are kind of buzzing in his ear, being like, listen, we got to make a change here.
It's possible that he has some of that Christ, that
groupthink,
that just kind of that groupthink, right? You get too many minds that are kind of Wisconsin-ish, and you have nobody. You need somebody that thinks outside the box a little bit when things get stagnant, right? And you got Krabenhoff. You got a lot of players that are going to think like Greg Gard, which when you're struggling probably isn't the best thing. Yeah,
no doubt. Christian Gross says Wisconsin can be a blue blood in basketball if Mac wants them to be. Look, I really hope so. I really hope that blue blood is a strong term because there comes a lot of money behind that. Obviously, I just want to see growth in this program. I saw it a little bit this year. It's not good enough. You heard me. If you listened to Locked On yesterday, you heard me for about 10 minutes just rant and rave about how upset I was. And I really am. I'm still really sad about it. But let's move on to happier things, please. Football is coming. Spring football is around. The spring football is here. We've had a practice. We've got 2 weeks left until the next one, which, good Lord, we don't have a spring game, which we were going to go to Madison for that, but there's no spring game anymore. There's going to be an open practice in the fall for those interested in that. So that'll be fun. Or allegedly, that's what we're saying there. Do you think, guys, and I'm guessing the answer is no, but I just want to put it out there. Do you think there's any chance that Tyler Van Dyke is not the starter come fall? Any chance at all? Other than injury, of course.
I was going to say, bar injury, no.
Nope.
Right.
None.
It's not happening.
It's very coach speaky, right? They're just kind of like, there's a lot of competition, blah, blah, right? I mean, that's fair. I think that's, one thing I thought was interesting was the practice has been a little chippy, and I like that. I don't know if you guys read that. There's been a couple dust ups, right, between the linebackers and the offensive linemen. Jack Nelson and Joe Bruner kind of got into it with the linebacking core. Listen, I don't know what you're thinking again doing it with Jack Nelson. I don't want to fight that guy.
Of course he's involved.
Did he false start?
What are some rotational things that interest you? I know you guys just talked about this a little bit. on Locked On. Give me, Justin, a position group that you are interested in seeing kind of advance through the fall. Through the spring.
I'll give one each side of the ball. I'm really interested in seeing the pass rush from the outside linebackers and how much better it looks this year. My gut instinct says that it'll be a lot better than what it was last year. I think that Lowry, Thomas, and Pius are going to be a major influx of speed and athleticism off the edge. And then I think that on the offensive side, I will go the tight end group. I think that that's a position, Ryan and I talked a little earlier tonight on it, that I think that we're going to see a bounce in production from that group. And I think that's going to be a big deal. If we double our production from that group, it goes from being pretty much nothing to being at least a solid contributor in the offense.
Let me give you one that's kind of scary, and I feel like is under the radar.
Punting?
Not punting, although special teams always terrify me at Wisconsin.
Always.
Backup center. Like, so you have all your hopes pinned on Jake Renfro, who hasn't played in like 2 years. And I hope he's healthy. If he's healthy, I think he's going to be fine. I think this team's better if he's healthy, and he's totally good. It sounds like James Durant, who we all thought was kind of a center, isn't going to be the guy.
He doesn't sound physically ready. He's only at 290, unless he packs on another 10 pounds over the course of
it doesn't sound
fall camp.
And now it sounds like it's a battle between maybe Kerry Kadonka and Colin Cubberley if Renfro can't snap.
I think Huber's got to be the guy, right?
I think they would move somebody inside. Like, I think they would slide a guard over, whether it's Huber or somebody else. But either way, my point is Renfro needs to stay healthy because we don't have depth there, unfortunately.
100% agree. And yeah, when I read that the snaps from the second teams were a little bit off there, but yeah, I agree. You think Huber? I would think Huber or Bruner potentially even coming in at center because I mean, look, we saw it last year. We saw a true guard move over, and we'll see what happens. But I agree, it has to be something there. One thing that really interests me is cornerbacks. I'm excited about RJ Delancey getting some reps there. I'm a little bit concerned about after Hallman, I get a little bit concerned about where we're going to go. Forkerin is not my favorite, but I mean, Justin loves him. I know.
I like him too.
I don't love him. I just think that he's a guy that has some potential.
I think RJ Delancey has potential, and I'm excited to see him.
I think that he has actually realized ability. Right. He's a guy that I think has a chance. He's going to play this year.
Yeah. I also am happy to see Braden Moore getting some good reps. I heard that he's getting some nickel reps, which is interesting. So that'll be good. And I haven't heard anything about Snowden yet. Have you guys read anything about Snowden? Anything coming out of? I'm really
I still think the raw so little coming out of one practice. Like
sure, of course. But hopefully, so I guess he's a guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing develop in the spring. On the offensive side of the ball, hearing that Malusi obviously looks really good, so that's nice to see. And Walker looks like a tank. I think the running back position, if Malusi is healthy, it is a strength of the team, right? We're going to have the young guys. What is it, Atuka? I think it's the only one it's there right now, right? Yeah. So we're going to have a lot of depth there, but interested to see how the reps kind of move between that group to kind of see like whether Atuka can get up there at all over time and how he's looking in practice. And how Walker's really going to push Malusi, because that could be a nice 1-2 combo, don't you think? I mean, that's pretty solid back there if health is top notch.
Yeah, I'm going to read Nez's comment here about this too, because are you confident in our running back room being perform at the top of the Big Ten? I don't think they need to be top of the Big Ten. What I do think they need to be solid and productive member of the offense. I think that I struggled to give too much expectations to this position this year, given the amount of youth and how dinged up Ches has been over the course of his career. And Walker has never been a guy who's been a dynamic back. But can they be productive in the offense? Like, can we get 2,000 yards rushing out of the group or 2,500 yards or whatever we need to in order for the offense to be as effective as it needs? I think it can be that. I think that the young guys are going to make some plays. I think they're also going to have some hiccups over the course of the season.
I'm a huge Jez fan. Like I am a huge Jez fan, and
he fits this offense.
Thomas said, like I've said it before, I think his injuries are flukish, and I know people push back on that. Whatever, that's just my.
That injury at Purdue was very flukish last year.
I think he's so good in this offense, and I think he's great. I think he's going to be a great fit. And I was talking to an Oklahoma guy who covers Oklahoma, and he said, quote, I don't have the quote in front of me. I don't know why I said quote, but he said,
quote,
quote, I don't have it, but he said, basically, you guys will love Tywee. He'll be a fan favorite. He'll blow people up. He's a great short yardage in between the tackles running back. Like, he's super high on him. He said, we just got a couple really, big time talents. It is what it is. He said, you're really going to like Tywee. So I think it's number 2 to a guy in Ches who I think fits this offense really well. I'm pretty high in the running back room. They're not going to be near the top of the Big Ten because there's some really loaded running back rooms in this conference.
Yeah, it's going to take them a year or two.
Yeah, I think they're upper tierish in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And that should be good enough, honestly, as long as health stays.
How many years of eligibility does Walker have? Oh, yeah. Ryan, take care. Have a good night. Thanks for jumping on, man.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Justin, how many years of eligibility does Walker have?
I think he's got 1. I think he's only here for 1 more year.
Okay.
So I think that I that's not shocking. He may have 2, but I'm pretty sure it's 1. And if that's the case, that's fine. Like, you're going to have such an influx of young guys. I mean, next year you're going to have 3 either redshirt freshman running backs or whatever, and you have the opportunity, if you need to grab somebody else, so be it, to bring into that room as an extra person. But I don't think we'll need it.
Right.
Like, I think you're going to have a top 2. I think all 3 of those guys are going to be hits. I can't say to what extent they'll be hits, but I think they're all going to be productive players at the college level.
I agree. And I feel like that's scary because, statistically, they're not all going to be hits. But I agree. I feel like the room is so deep right now. And that's something that it's not talked about a ton because receivers get a lot of talk and defense, all the transfer moves. But I think our running back room could be a really good situation next year. Other than defensive line, you can't use that because I feel like that's the answer. What position are you most worried about going into the spring here? Outside of D-line.
Huh? Other than
outside of D-line, yeah.
I'll
go while you think about it.
Sure.
For me, it's O-line. And even though, like, Jake Renfro, I think really, you saw in the LSU game, like, how impressive he was at the snaps. As long as he can stay healthy, I think we should be okay. And I'm only concerned because I just don't know how great the starters are really going to be. I'm happy with the depth that we're seeing. Like, you've heard me talk about how happy I am with Kevin Haywood, and then obviously he's making really good gains right now with Brady Collins, and there's a lot of talk about him, and I think he's going to be great. But he's also a first-year guy. I think when you look at the issues that Nelson had last year, and with Huber and Malman, I just don't know how confident I am going in with that offensive line, because it's, for the most part, pretty similar to what it was last year, almost entirely. And I think that is my biggest concern outside of D-line. It's O-line, because to be honest, I don't really have concerns about the quarterback. I mean, I do, but it's like Van Dyke's there. I don't have concerns about the running back. The receivers, I feel like we're in pretty good shape there. Defensively, we've got a ton of transfers coming in. So when you can't use D-line, to me, it's O-line. I still feel like that's the biggest issue, because if you think about last year, we had plenty of O-line issues. That has to be a productive unit for this to really work next year.
I think if the penalties are gone this year, or at least limited compared to last year, that the offensive line will be fine. I think there are 2 positions that I would probably lean on. I use one of them as the one that I'm most excited to see in tight end, because there just wasn't much production there last year. And if we have another year of that, you have to really start to wonder what's going on with that group. We need to find something from that group. And I just, as much as I want to see them be good, it's hard for me to guarantee that there's going to be production there. Otherwise, it's quarterback. And I think that's just because we don't have an incumbent that we look at and we're like, this person is a known quantity. So it's kind of like, if we don't have it, what are we looking at this year? Because it's really hard to see.
How excited are you about Mabry and when he's what he's going to be able to do with this program? So far, I mean, he's getting third team reps right now. Is that right?
Second team reps.
Because
they were split between him and Evers. They did a kind of an awkward thing.
Yeah.
Where it was
2-1, 2-2 type thing. Yeah.
So I feel pretty good about him. I think that all signs point that he looked pretty good in that first practice. So if that's the case, that's going to be a positive for him moving forward. Like, the goal for him is to learn the offense and just kind of get comfortable in it, so that by fall you can start to kind of take what you learned and start to develop yourself a little bit. I feel good about it. I think that he will challenge next year. The skill set's just so high with him that it's hard to look at it and be like, this guy's not going to be a dude. Now, I can't say that he's going to be like an all-conference type player, but I think that he'll be a productive quarterback for Wisconsin.
I feel like he is the reason that I'm not really concerned about the quarterback position because he just adds that piece of depth. Not to say that he's going to play next year, but all of a sudden now you go from a room that, yes, you had Mordecai and a little bit, and then you had really a lot of inexperience behind him. Now you've got two guys who've had bona fide experience in Van Dyke and Locke, and then you've got exciting young talent. You don't have depth behind that have played, but at least you've got guys that you're excited about, like Evers and Mabry and Cole LaCrue. So there's a lot of pieces in that room that I feel like, okay, I'm comfortable. Even if Van Dyke were to go down with an injury for a couple weeks, I mean, Locke stepping in, I think would be fine. If we had to see a young guy, I think there's some depth there, which is why I'm concerned about O-line, because while I like overall like guys like Haywood and Duran, I don't. When you talk about Colin Cubberly potentially being a backup center, and Kadonki, there's not a lot of like beef in that depth, and that concerns me a little bit. Like that's
the depth of the room is a concern,
right? But other positions, for the most part, I feel like I'm very hopeful about every other position, which kind of gives me
on paper for sure.
It gives me a little pause because I was also excited last year too, and then look what happens. But I think we're going to be improved. We got to be, right. I mean, there's no way we're not going to be an improved
on the defensive side. There are a lot of people talking and saying things about the first practice, and then it sounded like it looks like there's a lot more depth and talent on that side, and that's a big deal because I think that we were pretty limited athletically last year, which is why I think we made some of the moves that we did. But I think a lot of it, if that improves significantly, it opens the room for error for the offense. If you have a defense that can make some plays for you and hopefully give you some good opportunity of the ball in good field position, they'll hopefully be able to work off of that and build up some confidence.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the depth has got to be improved. It has to be because the linebackers that came in, and we've been excited about a lot of youth in the defensive backfield for a while now with Moore and Snowden. And I think there are players back there, Austin Brown, of course, Zachman. So that you couple that with experienced guys like Rico and Hunter Wooler, then all of a sudden you should have a very solid defensive backfield. You should have a very solid linebacking core with additions of Lowry and Pius, and the list goes on. And then young guys potentially coming in, Lafayette, and these guys. Lafayette was the guy who, by the way, got into it with Nelson. That's hilarious. I'm like, just this little freshman is like stepping up to Nelson. But of course, the D-line is where that issue comes in. And if the D-line doesn't perform, then you're going to have problems either way you cut it. Anything else on spring football? Any other nuggets that you want to talk about? Anything else related to spring football, excitement, positions, players, anything else that you want to get off your chest there?
Just really looking forward to seeing this come together and just getting more info on what we're hearing. Like, I want to hear about the position battles going forward and what's going on. I really am interested to find out what's going to happen with the linebacker groups and who seems to be running with what and what our two deep looks like. So for me, just kind of getting a feel for how all these pieces are going to fit together going into, hopefully the fall. Yeah. Like, there's so much that we have no idea on right now at this point. We're just hopeful that there's a lot more talent.
Winning Gambler says, got some love on defense now. Evan Gabriel says, it will be nice to have linebackers that don't look like they're running in quicksand. Great comment, Evan. Great comment. That's a fair. I mean, look, our linebackers looked really rough last year at times, especially running to the outside. I mean, I can't.
What did Muma run again for the combine? 4.9 or something like that?
Oh gosh. Oh man. And I was so wrong about him. Yeah. I was so wrong about him. I really was. And I'll tell you what, I was excited about Muma and Skylar Bell coming into last year, and I missed bad on both of those guys. Really bad. And I got a comment. Someone tweeted me or something about how I also missed on Nolan Winter. I don't think I missed on Nolan Winter yet. I'm telling you,
he's a true freshman. You got to give that one time.
Right, with a little Brady Collins love. Just give him a little work. Send him over to the football guys. Yeah. Let Brady work with him for a little bit, because he is a skilled guy that I'm just really not worried about. Nessa says, congrats to Muba on getting the worst routes in the combine for all players. I mean, it is what it is. Nessa also says Mabry is the 2025 starter. Boy, I don't know about that. I mean, it wouldn't be that shocking, right? Van Dyke's got 1 year left of eligibility. Yeah. It's either going to be Locke or Mabry, most likely. And if it's Mabry, then if it is Mabry, Nessa, what that means is that we hit on Mabry, right? And if he's starting in 2025, then he's going to have 3 years of starting, potentially 4 if he redshirts this year. And I think that's great.
I think he'll be starting, or I think he'll be at least sprinkled in for a series here or there to kind of get his feet wet and get him some experience. I just think the talent level is so high there from what he has. That obviously that's all willing that his mental side clicks, but we'll see with that.
I get nervous about like getting too excited about young quarterbacks like this because he is the guy that has a big upside, and I feel like we have been really excited about Mabry, and we do kind of look at the future, a few years from now, and we see him as a starter. I remember a time when I was like ecstatic that Kurt Phillips was coming to Madison, and I was like, Kurt Phillips is going to be the guy.
Fair, we don't know what Kurt Phillips ever would have been. I mean,
fair point.
He was a fourth-year quarterback, and he had like 15 knee injuries.
Fair point, but it didn't work out. Right? Ultimately, I was like, I remember thinking that this guy was going to be our guy. That I was telling everyone I would talk to, like, oh, just wait until we get Kurt Phillips. And I feel like a very similar way to Mabry. I feel like he is the guy that you're looking at, and you're like, okay, this guy could be the potential future of this program. And I think it's exciting to have, right? It's exciting. Mark Darkray says Nolan Winter still could be the next Nate Reavers Richie with our terrible development.
I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad. Are we talking junior year or senior year?
Right. Tyler Schreiber says even 2026 Mabry will be more than fine. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Robert Soren says Mabry can do it. Watching his full high school games, not just his highlights, loved that. Literally, I saw him running things. Longo asked his QBs to do. Mabry will be a beast. Justin, you watched a lot of his high school games. I didn't watch any of them this year.
I like this film a lot.
Yeah, you really like a lot of what he does.
I think there were a couple games that people will point to and be down on him, and it's because they played really, really good teams, and his teams were overmatched. And when you're a quarterback doing that in that type of system, you can't throw passes that aren't there. Like he threw a couple of balls that he missed on in those games. He didn't turn the ball over. His team just wasn't good enough when they played a couple of those. There are other games where he absolutely torched. His stats, if they wouldn't have been pulling him at like halftime or like early in the third quarter for some of their games, his numbers would be ridiculous. Like he probably would have had 45, 50 touchdowns and probably 3,500 yards, if not more. I think he only threw like 2,300 or something yards. And that was with him having probably 4 games where he played a half.
Yeah. Winning Gambler agrees and says, I thought Skyler would have been done better in the new system too. I really did, man. I was really high on him last year.
He looked like he could have been dynamic if he catch the ball.
Yeah. God, none of them could catch the ball. Nessa says, just keep Locke happy enough to get his brother. So one other thing we wanted to quickly chat about is we admittedly don't talk a lot about any other sports other than Badger basketball and football, of course, because that's what Justin and I watch a lot. We don't miss a single game. We haven't missed a single game of either of those teams in probably 20 years. So if not more, but I want to give a little credit to the women's hockey program tonight. Lost to Ohio State 1-0 in the national championship game, but listen, when the volleyball team was in their tournament, we talked about them. The women's hockey team is a dynasty in college hockey.
Great season.
It's amazing to see what they did. Ohio State, I watched this game because I did not want to watch James Madison play Duke. So I did watch this game, and it was great. Ohio State did score in the third period. There's really not much we could do other than that. But I thought we played well. The women's game is interesting, but boy, they are very talented. These women work their butts off. So kudos to the Wisconsin women's hockey team for once again getting to the Frozen Four, and this time coming up a little bit short against Ohio State. The men's hockey team also has made the field. They are in the NCAA tournament. They will face off March 29th, so this Friday against Quinnipiac, and then they will play most likely Boston College in the sort of Elite Eight, if you will, because there's obviously just 16 teams that get in this tournament. They'll have to beat the number 1 overall seed, Boston College, to get to the Frozen Four. The Frozen Four's in Minneapolis this year. Certainly wishing them well. Will you watch any of the hockey tournament, Justin? I'm going to try to watch as much as
I'll try to watch some of it. I know nothing about hockey, but I like watching it. I like seeing the hits. And it's really interesting to see some of the passing and how they set things up and just kind of understand where guys are supposed to be. So it's an interesting game. But
I watch hockey because obviously I watch NHL because I'm a Golden Knights fan. I live in Vegas, as you all know. I do watch the Knights play. So I do like hockey, but I don't watch the college game, to be honest. I went to a few games because if you live in Madison, going to the Kohl Center for a hockey game is fantastic. I mean, that is a great atmosphere. So I definitely have been to a few Badger hockey games, but no, I don't really watch them. But we will be watching. I'm going to definitely be watching. Maybe we'll have a hockey guy on a little bit. If any of you guys are really interested in hockey, want to come on and talk some of this tournament, let us know. Send us a DM and we'll get you on. I live in Vegas, Thomas Miller, not Henderson. I'm a West Side Vegas guy, really close to Bishop Gorman High School. Justin, final thoughts about this horrific loss that we had, football, anything else you want to get to before we end the show today, my friend?
I mean, when it comes to basketball, so much to see what's going to happen over the next few weeks. We'll hopefully get an idea of what we're looking at going into next year.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully there's something promising, whether that's a change or whether that's work in the portal or what. I would like to see something positive come out of it. Hopefully it's just not all negative. As far as football goes, I'm really looking forward to seeing the spring camp. Like, this is, other than baseball spring training and being able to follow some of that, I love spring football more than anything, because you get to hear about so many of the young guys that you don't get to hear about during the season. So I really enjoy looking forward to it.
For me, football, I'll start there. I'm really excited about it. I totally agree with you. I feel like my excitement level always rises for football as soon as March Madness ends, and March Madness ended early for us. So now I'm turning my attention solely to football, which will most certainly be the premise of a lot of these podcasts going forward into the summer. We're going to talk a lot about football and break down a lot of things. We will have a closeout show for basketball, hopefully next week, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Going into basketball, I don't know if JB or Bo Dragon are with us tonight, but I can tell you that I will say, look, I am really close to moving onto this train of getting rid of Gard. I know that Justin's been on it for quite a while. I was really upset. I don't really know what to make of everything, and we're going to have a show where we really break this down and talk a lot about it. But I'm just really over the early exits in the NCAA tournament. I'm really over it. You can't do this to your fans. I just don't understand it. We're a better team. When you play like you played in the Big Ten tournament, how are you not ready for this? Every single analyst in the world was talking about how great James Madison is going to be. How were you not ready for this, Greg Gard? Coaching staff, players just not showing up. I don't really know what happened. What I do know is that it's not acceptable to be a team that doesn't get past the first round, that doesn't compete. Like, we should have been playing Duke today. That would have been a much better game had we been playing Duke. And it crushes me because, like, those other teams, like, there's so many favorites that won today, by the way. There's so many, all those other teams, they got it done. And there was another 5 that lost to a 12. It was Grand Canyon, had their win, but we shouldn't have been one of those teams. We and even as bad as we played, we were still had an opportunity to get in the game in the second half, but we couldn't do it. We were never in that game. I think Ryan said that yesterday. We're never in it. We were never really competing. And I'm just, it saddens me to think that that's how we're going to leave this year's basketball season, after that we had such a great December and January, horrific February, and we came back in March and got excited about it. And now I just feel like I'm over it, and I'm not prepared to actually say, yes, I want Gard out, but we are going to have that discussion next week. And I think it is something that I'm getting close to, because as you've said many times, Justin, you have been really big on the fact that you don't think Gard has the upside that this program needs. And that's always been your take. And I appreciate that. And I respect it. I have been more of a high floor guy. So I have been that guy. I do like the fact that we get those wins, but I'm getting to the point where I'm like, if I don't see any chance of really being a Final Four team, which I said I have seen that in the past, that's where my line is getting drawn. And that's where I feel like I am beginning to move in that direction. And it is upsetting to me because I don't want to be that guy who wants Gard out. But I mean, and I'm going to put this comment up here because I feel like Thomas Miller is who's a good friend of the show, who's always listened to our show, says it really well. He says, I'm done with mediocrity. And Thomas, I think you're right. I think that's a really good way to put it. And I think, and Robert Sorensen says Gard has next year, and that's it. I think he probably does. Question from Tyler Schreiber. Do you think the 10 p.m. tip-off had anything to do with their performance? Sit around and waiting all day would suck, to be honest, but obviously no excuses. I don't really think that matters too much. I think in the NCAA tournament,
I think that's an excuse because James Madison had plenty of juice on their side.
Yeah, and I would think, Tyler, I think my biggest thing is, regardless of what time it was, we looked like we didn't even get off the bus. Like, I've never been so, I can't remember from beginning to end, never even being excited about what I was seeing. There was one point when Max was hitting threes in the second half where I was like, okay, if he's going to save us, he might be able to get it done. But there was just nothing. The amount of turnovers, I mean, just 19 turnovers, season high. I'm just sad about it, man. I'm really sad. Sad way to end the show. But nonetheless, we'll get into Gard a little bit more next week. We're going to have that discussion. I want everyone's opinions on this. I know we'll get a lot of comments on YouTube. So certainly let us know what you guys think about the Greg Gard thing. We'll have some closeout things for the basketball season as well. Final thoughts, Justin? Anything before we close the show?
No, man. I think we got it. We're good.
All right. All right, everybody. Sad day for the program, of course, but football is just a mere few months away. And you know that the guy over here, that way, that was horrible. This is what I want to do. This guy over here is going to be giving you all the recruiting nuggets that you need as we head into this. And we talk about spring football. Justin and I are very, very, very excited about football. But with that, goodbye to the Wisconsin Badger program. Goodbye to Tyler Wahl and Conor Essegian. Wish you well, buddy. On Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.